Welcome back to Heart of the Frontlines. This is going to be our 10th episode. And in the light of the recent cases I was working on, which is children and teenagers are being lured online, I decided to do an episode on it. And before you skip this episode because it feels too dark and it's too scary and my kid will never, please just give it a listen because I can't tell you how many times I did this presentation for parents, frontline workers, where at the end, the police officer female comes up to me and say, wow, now I know what's really happening to my kid. Mind you, this was back in 10 years ago, but still. So I'm not trying to scare you. This isn't a horror episode. This is strictly education. And I always say this. If you know the signs and you know what's happening, you have the power to change it. You will have all the knowledge on the planet to know what to do if, heaven forbid, something like this is happening to your child or the neighbor's child or somebody that you love or somebody that you're working with. So here we go. Let's dive in. Do not pause. So where is online sex trafficking? What is digital sex trafficking? What is extortion? What is online exploitation? We're going to talk about the signs. We're going to talk about grooming, luring. We're going to talk about what does it look like to you as a parent or caregiver or somebody who works with a young child or a teenager. Once you see the signs, what do? Who do you call? How do you talk to that child? These are the things we are going to discuss in this episode. Did you know that during the pandemic, the online extortion and exploitation of children and teenagers went up by 216% in Canada? So what happened is that our kids and teenagers were forced to get online. People, families and parents who never actually gave cell phones or smartphones to their children were in some cases actually told by the school that they need to give their children phones, enable for their child to keep up with school studies. I actually have a couple of cases currently where those children at the age of 13 were given a phone because the school required it for schoolwork, so the parents had to give in, unfortunately, access to all kinds of social media as well. And sure enough, they were lured and groomed and they became a victim of sex trafficking. So let's talk about the signs. Let's talk about what human trafficking, online human trafficking looks like today. But before we dive into that, I just really want to talk to you about something that nobody really talks about. So the first thing we need to talk about before we even get into the signs is our kids and their brain and the way they see the world today. And we need to talk about how they are feeling. And we need to talk about scientifically how their brain works. You know, this thing that we do generation to generation where we are teenagers and we don't understand our parents and they don't understand us, and then we become parents and we don't understand our kids. And then our kids today start talking to some strangers and they do things like we would have never done when we were kids, and we just don't understand why they would do such a thing. Well, I just want to assure you that if we had cell phones when we were kids, I can guarantee you that we would have done exactly the same what they are doing. And the reason for that is because our brain was wired exactly the same way. So let's talk about the teenager's brain first. Why do they behave like this? Why do they do things that doesn't make a lot of sense to an adult? Let's talk about that. And I'm just going to read this very quickly. This is a study by the Stanford Medicine Children's Health, Understanding the Teen Brain. It doesn't matter how smart our teens are or how well they scored on a SAT or ACT test. The rational part of a teen's brain isn't fully developed and won't be until the age of 25. In fact, researchers has found that adult and teen brains work very differently. Adults think with the part of the brain that is responsible for rational thinking. This is the part of the brain that responds to situations with good judgment and awareness of long-term consequences. Teens process information with a different part of the brain. I think it's called amygdala. This is the emotional part, which means in teens' brain, the connection between the emotional part of the brain and the decision-making center are still developing. It's not fully developed yet, which means when we ask a teenager, what were you thinking? Well, they weren't thinking. They were feeling. So now we know that our kids are emotional. They are emotional beings. They feel first and then think later. So now that we understand that, I'm going to walk you through a tiny little bit of a time traveling. So let's go back to the time when we were young. I grew up in the 80s. So what is the difference between growing up in the 80s and today? Holy, a lot. So what were we doing when we were kids? We were playing outside all the time. The world was a very different place. So we were playing outside. I was playing with my friends, and then I was running around, and I was rollerblading, and we always got into trouble, but silly trouble, like ring the doorbells. Don't tell my mother I said that. Anyways, but we grew up in a very different way, right? So at the time they taught us about stranger danger, whatever. But the one thing, every time I ask this in the workshops, it's incredible. So I lived in Europe, but I asked people in North America, what did you do when the street lights came on? Everybody at the same time, you go home. So that means that there was a common trend everywhere around the world. It doesn't matter if you lived in communism or North America or whatever. When the street light came on in the 80s, you know that you had to go home, right? There's just unwritten rules. So that was one. And then let's talk about the time we lived in. So, I was pretty young. I didn't really follow the politics and anything, but I lived in communism and we lived in a bubble. But the other thing is you live in a social bubble when you're a child, and your social bubble is your immediate environment, what's happening right around you, what's happening in the pop culture, in the movies, and that's where the teenagers live, right? In songs, pop culture, music. They don't listen to politics unless, they are forced to watch the news with their mother like I was every night. However, I still barely understood what was going on. So for me as a teenager in the 80s in the communism that just ended, and also the world actually opened up to the Western society, to me, it was all about the American movies and, Dirty Dancing and Rocky Balboa and those songs like Whitney Houston, the innocent songs like, I just want to dance with somebody. I just want to love somebody. And, that was our world. And every single movie that we watched at the time in the 80s was all about find your way to the top and don't give up and believe in yourself and all that fun stuff. I absolutely love Dirty Dancing. I still do. To this day, I watch it all the time because to me, it took me to a whole other world. And you know why? Because I didn't have a really good home life. So when I watched that movie, I was in their world. And I was able to escape from the world that I was living at the time. And in the Dirty Dancing movie, that girl could dance. And she was like a little girl who nobody took serious. That's how I felt too. And finally, she found this man who took care of her, who saw her, and they were dancing. They looked cool and awesome. Believe me, when I say this, that when I watched that movie at 13, if a Patrick Swayze-looking guy in their 40s would have showed up at my door and said, come with me, I'll take you away and I'll give you a good life, I would have flew out the door. And do you think I would have thought about it twice? No. Do you think I had the capacity to think about what the hell am I doing right now? No, I didn't. In any case, I did end up being trafficked later, but that's a whole other story. But my point is that our children live in a world and live in a society in their social bubble. And as teenagers, their immediate world is pop culture, music, and videos, online videos and reality shows. That's where they live. So while their brain is being formed, their brain is like a sponge. So they're looking around inside of their bubble. They're listening to music. They're listening to trends. And they're trying to form who they are. They are literally just trying to figure it out who they are. It's formative years. And the biggest part is they are extremely emotional about everything. Not because they want to, but because it's the hormones. Just simply because it's science. Their body is going through changes. Just like women go through menopause and men go through their man menopause, teenagers are going through huge scientific and biological changes. And those are the things that we are usually never take into consideration. So I'm trying to close a gap for you, that big gap that we usually have between parents and our kids, and why we don't understand them and why they do things that we would never do. Again, I assure you, we would have done the same stuff if we had cell phones. So let's go back to your child's brain. So here is a child who is in the middle of development, scientifically, biologically, in every possible way, and they are extremely emotionally vulnerable. Doesn't matter if they come from the best possible family on earth. As long as they are teenagers, they are extremely vulnerable. And they are vulnerable simply because they are teenagers. And of course, there's a different level of vulnerability based on the teenager's family circumstances. So now that you understand your child's brain scientifically, now that you understand how they act emotionally, and now that you understand that the choices they make is actually simply based on the social bubble around them, because the social bubble is basically a mirror. A social bubble is something that they want to become. They want to become what they see around them. So let's talk about what did we grow up in as a social bubble. So like I said, we already talked about the movies and music. What we didn't talk about is the trends. What kind of trends did we grow up in? What was happening in the world around us? So I remember at the time we started talking about, cure AIDS. And that's when the gay rights movement started to become big. That's it. That's all I remember. Yeah, there was Cold War, but that's all I remember. And I'm going to put this picture in the digital library for you to see it so that you really, really understand the difference between what we had to deal with as teenagers and what our kids have to deal with. You got to see these images, because once you see them, you just want to give a huge hug to your child. So that's all I remember. I would wake up in the morning. It's nice and sunny. I would get on my bike. I would go to school. Got through school, got through the usual gossip, went to my mom's police station, then made dinner, did my homework, and then went to bed. That was my average day. Even though, yes, I came from a bad family, there was domestic violence, so on and so forth, but that was my day. Let's talk about our kids' day. So what do they do when they wake up? The first thing they do is they look at their phones. And through the phone, what kind of a world are they seeing? Let's just go back to 2021. We don't have to go any further. When your kid looked up their phone in the morning when they woke up, they see COVID, they see fires, they see the world is literally on fire. The world is coming to an end. I mean, can you imagine how scary everything was for them? They couldn't go to school. They couldn't see their friends. They were completely cut off from their own world. So where did they find comfort? Again, online, in videos, in reality shows, through Instagram and influencers and silly videos like how to eat Thai pot. But this is their social bubble. Stay with me. We're just getting to the real parts. This is the part that's going to make you want to share this over and over and over again until there's no more way to share it. So now you understand the social bubble. Why is it so important for you as a parent to understand the social bubble? Well, listen to this. What is in our kids' social bubble today? Look around. Hypersexuality. Hypersexuality. So it's in the movies, it's in the videos, it's on Instagram, it's on TikTok. Look at the red carpet events. I'm just absolutely floored. Look at the halftime shows. And, you can attack me all you want for saying this, that Jennifer Lopez and Shakira's halftime show. There is no reason for a 13 years old who's watching a football game with their parents need to watch that. I'm all for feminism and healthy body images and all that. But the strip show had no place in a halftime show. And again, just a couple of examples. Look at some of the commercials, completely hypersexualized commercials about chocolate and candy that clearly is actually aimed for teenagers. Commercials like, we had a couple of years ago, just when all the online extortion went up by 216% in Canada at least, a Canadian company called Garage that mainly offers clothing for teenagers between the age of 11 to, 20, 22 years old, the female CEO thought it would be a brilliant idea to start a commercial called Send Me a Nude. Yeah, send me a nude, when 99% of the sexual extortions online starts with send me a nude. So, of course, me and 17 other agencies got together during COVID, and we did an online petition. We called the police. We got everybody involved. Of course, no one was held accountable. It even went on the news a couple of times. We got a hold of the CEO, and the CEO didn't actually send us a response. They just released it in the media that the female CEO felt that it's all about healthy body image and that we need to empower our young women, that it's okay to feel the way they feel about their body. Now, at the time, if you were 13 or 12 or 11 years old and you were on their email subscription or membership, you would have got this catalog in your email, which is exactly what happened. A lot of parents also took it to the media. So you would get this email about their new nude collection, which is called Send Me a Nude. And in that collection, the pictures were unbelievable. So these are 11, 12, 13 years old little kids wearing sportswears or underwear, sports underwears. Some of these girls' nipples are showing. Call me conservative all you want, but why do we need to advertise 12, 13, 11 years old little kids barely naked? I'm sure there's another way to promote sports underwear. But here's the worst part. Then we went to see their bathing suit collection. So in the bathing suit collection, we found many pictures, but one of them was... Anyways, so I saw this picture and I looked at that picture, and then I pulled up another picture from a website that's used by sex traffickers where they sell young teenagers for sexual purposes. So here's a website where all you see is victims of human trafficking between the age of, 15 to 20, 24 years old. And you see their picture half naked, whatever, wearing a bathing suit. And then I looked at the picture of the bathing suit collection. Do you know what was the difference? I'll tell you. When I do the workshops and I put up the two pictures side by side to police and service providers, and I ask them, which picture do you think it came from the website where they sell victims? And which picture do you think came from the garage bathing suit catalog for 12 years old girls? And they cannot tell me the difference. I'm going to put both pictures for you in a PDF, in a digital library on our website. And you tell me, that is the problem. That is the problem when we are living in a world now where sexuality is so normalized. And you know what? It's all good. I'm all good about that. However, our kids do not have the capacity, scientifically speaking, to understand what's happening to them when they make a decision such as sending a nude picture. They literally do not have scientifically the capacity. So yeah, I'm all for female body and all that, but not when it comes to our kid. So now you understand where our kids at emotionally and what their social bubble is and what their normal is. As we talked about it, their normal is very hypersexual because that's all they consume anywhere they look: commercials, videos, music. So here I am as a teenager. I live online, right? And we don't want to tell them to, don't be online. I mean, let's talk about that for one more second before we talk about online sex trafficking. So let's say they take a phone away from them and they live in a city and you're going to tell them, go outside. Where? Go outside where? Do what? Walk around the streets? Or, where do they go? What do they do? Don't you think it's almost more dangerous than being online? Here's the thing. Danger is everywhere. You can't take the danger away. What we can do is to teach our kids on how to live in a world that we are living today. That is your biggest weapon. We will not be able to change the world today. We're working on it. And maybe 10 years from now, we will find ways where our kids can be online much safer, just like we did in the 80s, stranger danger, blah, blah, blah. But right now, while we are going through this transition, we will not stop the world and we will not stop evolution. And you cannot take the phone away from your kids. But what you can do is you can teach them how to be online in a safe way. So let's get to that part. So here we go. We talk a lot about online extortion, online sex trafficking, online luring and grooming. What are these things? Let's talk about online luring, grooming, extortion, and exploitation. So the predators know that they probably have a better chance finding a teenager, a young, vulnerable teenager online than in the malls today, for example. I mean, it's still possible. They still go to the mall, they go to the bus stops, and, there's still those places where they actually can still recruit, but it's actually so much easier and efficient for a predator to recruit somebody online. So they can actually, at the same time, be in a conversation at least with 12 to 20 kids at the same time. And depending on which one is hooked more, they're going to put their energy and effort into that child. So children today want to go for how many likes they have on their profile. They are more popular if they have more likes. The problem is that they don't know half of the people who like their profile. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about at the very end. What can you do? So now the predators are online, and that's where they fish for your children. Now they can come through gaming sites, they can come through chat rooms, and of course, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook is, I was told it's for old people. I love Facebook. But, any of those social websites, it usually comes in a private messaging. Usually what happens is they go through your child's profile, they look at their likes, their favorite things, and they start having a conversation. And they pretend that they're also either young kids or younger or whatever. You never actually know their real identity. But the point is that these conversations happen behind the scenes. And they start making your child feel like that they are listening, they're becoming such a good friends. They want to be there for them. At the beginning, it most of the time starts with like, I'm here for you. And that's for females. For males, for young boys, unfortunately, there's a huge trend where younger hot women, or so they look like on a profile, they send requests to these young boys and say, hey, send me a picture of your you know what. So they send a picture eventually, and then the extortion starts. Like, I'll tell your parents, I'll tell your mom, I post this picture everywhere. I mean, young boys, especially in Canada, I hear a lot of these stories. They end up going and stealing thousands of dollars from their parents behind their back because they're so ashamed and feel guilty. And some of these cases actually already led to suicide. So again, teenagers are being approached by complete strangers, most often by complete fake profiles, and they make them believe that they are friends, they have this relationship. In some cases, they even make this individual or young teenager believe that they are in a relationship now. I mean, I have a case where this young teenager is now been talking to somebody overseas for over 5 months. They never saw them on video, but they believe that they are in complete love. And now this person overseas is sending them money for shoes and phone and food. And they make them believe that, this is a real relationship and that they're going to take care of them. I also had a case where the little girl was 9 years old. During COVID, she was in this innocent game room. And she was talking to somebody, and the voice was a voice of a 9-year-old girl. And they became very good friends for 2 weeks. And eventually this little girl started to have really bad feelings and went to her parents and said, I have a really new friend and she's really cool and everything. And I think she's going to my school, but I never actually met her before. But now she wants me to meet her on Wednesday behind the school in the park, but she told me not to bring my parents. She was terrified coming forward to the parents. And of course, parents called us and we looked into it, and turns out that 9-year-old little girl that this girl was talking to was actually a 47-year-old pedophile who belonged to a pedophile ring in New Jersey. And the goal was to lure the girl out of the house. And God knows who would have picked her up, right? So, okay, again, I'm not trying to terrify you. I'm so sorry. Let's pull back a little bit. Everybody take a deep breath, have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee or whatever your choice of thing is. Again, we are telling you all these things to give you the secret weapon so this will never happen to your child. There's the luring and a grooming stage. And the luring and grooming is when they build a relationship. That's why they, oh, you're so beautiful. I'm here for you. I'll be your best friend, whatever. That could take 2 days or 2 weeks or 3 months. And then the gifts They're going to send them gifts, and your child just starts acting very weird. And I mean, I could say that they really don't want you to look at your phone, but that's not news. Teenagers don't want parents to see their phone. But this becomes a little bit more unusual behavior. They become literally addicted to their phone, and they get very possessive, and they have to check their phone all the time. And then they start maybe wearing makeup that they never wore before. They may start, dressing a little bit more promiscuous. So the other thing that's happening is that they testing them online. They make them say, get undressed and do sexual stuff, record themselves. The traffickers and the predators trying to see how far they can push this child's boundary. Meanwhile, it's completely normal for teenagers to start to explore. Unfortunately, most of them exploring these things online with strangers, and they don't understand how dangerous it is. But we will make them understand. So here are simple 3 tips that can literally save your child's life and prevent your family from a tragic outcome. Number 1, I need you to sit down with your teenager, and I need you to have a conversation with them. And this is the most important conversation you will have with them, and they will understand this. Just simply ask them, look, please don't do anything online in private rooms you would not do in a mall. Let me explain. Tell your child, if your child walks through the mall and a stranger comes up and say, can you show me your boobs? Would you do it? No, of course not. Tell your child, if you walk through the mall and a stranger young woman would come up and ask you to pull your pants down to show them your male part, would you do it? Of course not. Basically, golden rule, what you would not do in public, don't do it in private, especially with strangers. Golden, life-saving rule. Number 2, so if it feels naughty or bad, or you have that tingly feeling in your stomach that this is probably not good, it's called instincts, and don't do it. So as a parent, you can just tell your child, that funny voice inside that tells you sometimes don't do this and don't do that. Have a conversation. Do you know what instinct is? Can you tell me a time of your life when that funny voice told you and you didn't, and then you realized, wow, like you didn't end up falling off that cliff or whatever? You probably should listen to that voice. That's your inner guidance system telling you, don't do it. Number 3, if this already happened to your child, or you realize your child is being groomed or extorted and you guys having a conversation, please make sure you tell your child that this is not their fault. Yes, did they do some naughty stuff? Like, who didn't? But this is not their fault. The only person that can be held responsible for this is the predator online. So have that conversation. Make sure you tell them they are not in trouble and everything is going to be okay. And here's the last thing, which is a bonus stuff. But if you think that your child is lured or something is going on and you're afraid that your child wouldn't talk to you, please find a trusted friend, family friend, and anybody that your child is really, really close to. Tell your concerns to your friend, aunt, family member, and have that family member or trusted person have a conversation with your child. It's okay if the child doesn't come to you with this stuff. Believe me, the number 1 reason why I got trafficked, because I was terrified of telling my mom what was going on. So just make sure you have that relationship where either your child can even come to you or can go to someone. So in closing, couple of things, because we're coming to the end and I really didn't get to talk to half of the things I really wanted to talk to, and I wanted to keep this at 30 minutes. So go on our website, heartofthefrontlinespodcast.ca, go into digital library and in human trafficking stuff. I will have so much more content there for you. I will have PDFs. I will also have a link for you for a Now You Know talk show we did 4 years ago, episode called The Kids Are Not All Right. There's a cyber security analyst, a detective, and it actually was created for you to sit down with your kids and watch it together, grab a popcorn, so on and so forth. It's such a great way to have this conversation with your kids about online safety. You watch the video and then you talk about it. I put the link into the digital links as well. So just have the conversations with your kids about those 3 things we summed up at the end, and I promise you, it will be a lifesaver. Thanks for listening.